Welcome to Generation Global, Navigating a Changing World. This is a special series featuring young voices from China and around the globe. I'm Steve Hatherley from RoundTable. I'm with Yushun from RoundTable as well. Good afternoon. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good, and this is a good setup.
It's a great setup. I love our studio and I love our topic today. And
Yeah,
this AI is a topic that you are number one familiar with and number two you love.
definitely. And we've been talking about the topics of AI for so many times. And of course, ethics is the points that we need to mention when we are in this era that AI is developing so fast that we can get shocked basically every week.
We're at a critical juncture with AI as we speak. Well, today we're joined by Ace Asim, a researcher and student at Peking University. An interesting story. He's originally from New Jersey. He now bases himself in Beijing, and he brings a cross continental perspective to one of the most urgent conversations of our time: how artificial intelligence is reshaping societies across industries and cultures. His work sits at the intersection of AI and ethics and policy and cultural perspective, exploring how emerging technologies shape our future, influence equity, and reflect different societies' values. From algorithmic bias and media representation to how AI tools are reshaping storytelling, creativity, and access across cultures. Ace definitely offers a global lens shaped by living, not only being from the United States, but living here in China and studying across continents too. Also, Yushin, our conversation with Ace happens to coincide with China's two sessions. That, of course, is the annual meetings where the nation charts its policy direction. And this year, it's an important discussion because AI governance and the ethical boundaries of emerging technologies are very much a part of the conversation as China balances innovation and responsibility. You know, we're living in a world, of course, we know, where AI is transforming rapidly how we create and consume and connect. Conversations like the one that we're just about to have with Ace will help us understand not just what AI can do, but what it should be doing. Ace, good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Steve and Yushun, for having me. I'm very excited to talk with you guys.
So it's been a little while since you've relocated from New Jersey to Beijing, correct? It's been a couple of years?
Yeah, it's been so I first got to China in January of 2024. I lived around Shanghai, around Suzhou, Shanghai area, for about 2 years until this past fall, where I am now at Peking University in Beijing. So definitely a change of pace with regards to going from the U.S. to China, but also from Shanghai to Beijing. They're two very beautifully distinct cities.
Then I think you will have the similar experience of traveling from that southern part to Beijing as I did, because I am actually born and raised in that area, that southern part
Oh,
of
yeah,
China
not far
area.
from Shanghai, right?
Yes, it's really close to there. And yeah, how are you like feeling right now living in Beijing and experience all the climate and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, just today actually, I was in Chinese class and my Lao She asked me what I think of Beijing's weather. And the first thing that comes to mind is gan. It's incredibly dry. So, when I was in the south, it was humid, but here it's just the winter is just brutal. It's cold, it's windy, and it's dry. So I have to keep moisturizing myself and putting chapstick on, or else I'm gonna, I don't know, disappear.
I'm laughing because that's exactly the same experience I went through with my first winter in Beijing. All right, well, let's dive into it, Ace. Let's talk first, perhaps, about the experience of living in America, of course, being from there and now studying and being in China, and how that relates to AI. Your experiences thus far, especially dealing with the two cultures that you're most familiar with most recently, how has that helped to shape your understanding of AI's role in society?
Yeah, so like you said, yeah, I grew up in the States, in New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. I have been, up until university, I was educated in the States, but I also had some brief study abroad in Spain and Barcelona, and then finally settling down here in China. And so I will say that life in China has been like the farthest from my life in the US, where, there's a language barrier, and, once you cross or begin to even cross that language barrier, dialects come into play. I drive in the States, but here I rely on public transportation. And, in the States, we have a saying, cash is king. And here, we live in a cashless, phone-based society. So there's so much that's different here. So if there's really anything that I have taken away from that with regards to AI and society, it's that AI's success depends on its ability to adapt to local context and be sensitive. And where there may not necessarily be such a functional, or there's a one-size-fits-all solution may not be the best way to go in some aspects. Some technology can feel empowering while alien in others. So there are a lot of differences and a lot of nuances that need to be taken into account. I've had my experiences with just cultural differences. Sometimes I'm misunderstood when I speak Chinese. Now, it could just very well be because my Chinese is not that good with my pronunciation, but there are times where I've dealt with language barrier, but also just cultural difference. So, experiencing it firsthand, I realize that if we're going to have something as, permeating as AI, dealing with almost every aspect of life, it ought to be more adaptable and sensitive to the context within which it operates.
Do you think that you said something that kind of gave me a light bulb moment that I don't think I've even thought about before, about AI adapting to society? But my first reaction when you said that was, I feel like society is adapting to AI. The technology is coming out, the advancements are coming out so quickly.
Yeah.
I'm constantly trying to figure out, how to use the latest app on my phone or the latest update in AI. Do you think there's any debate to be had there? What is adapting to what?
I fully believe that it's a circle, it's a cycle, where they are constantly influencing each other. And they have the ability to do that, where we see, yes, we live our lives that are very much, now dictated by, we are adjusting to AI. And that's it's its own term of AI literacy that we'll probably get into later in this discussion. But, how well or how acquainted you are with AI is what I mean by that. And the others are basically that the values or the priorities or the outputs of artificial intelligence can reflect the inputs, right? It's not a clean whatever goes in goes out, So I think of this as a cycle where they both influence each other. So we live our lives, sort of adjusted to the newest AI, or we have to use it. We are constantly learning about how to use it. That's, AI literacy. And there's the other aspect where the cultural values or the certain priorities or biases go into these AI models. And as a result, it has chances of spitting those things back out. So AI in a way actually reinforces cultural values and cultural understanding or priorities. But at the same time, on the other hand, it has this ability to reinforce things. And reinforcement can mean that it reinforces culture, but it also can reinforce, or it can move towards a cultural erosion in some ways, where we are dealing with trends or certain things that are in these algorithms that are put out, and as a result, that's the content, or that's what we are feeding on. So I think that they both very much impact one another. So whatever goes into AI, it comes out, and we adjust to that, and then we put it back into the AI machine. And so that cycle is, they're both interconnected. I don't think of those two things as separate.
Yeah, and I feel that I've observed some of the differences, I think, comparing to the development of AI from China and the global or international AI applications. Because I feel that in recent years, of course, we're seeing a lot of these new AI applications coming out, and they are focusing on different areas, no matter it's about large language model, they can be chatbots, or they can generate videos or images. And a lot of these, I think, international AI models, they are focusing on enhancing the productivity. While recently, a lot of these AI models that are really, really popular here in China, they are more focusing on how can make your life easier, or they're just seamlessly integrating into your lives and trying to making the threshold of using an AI really, really low. And I think that I think I observed that kind of differences in this kind of scenario or in recent days. Is I think these AI applications here in China, they are trying to like really what we're talking about, the AI literacy. Of course, we have the ability, or we should have the ability, to learn to use these AI to make our lives easier or more productive. And the thing is that some of these AI applications in China, they are just they're helping you to make your life easier without even you to learn it. So that's also some of the purposes or aims of these companies they're trying to do.
Where AI becomes so good to the point where it's not even that recognizable in our lives anymore. It's around us all the time, but we don't know whether we're using it or not. And I think that's a fair point. Let's get to the ethics side of things, because I think, I've read a lot that we're at a really important inflection point right now. We're at a crossroads where things are coming out so quickly. If we're not careful about reminding ourselves of the ethical importance of AI, we might get to a point where it becomes too late. But I want to talk about the entertainment industry and the media industry. This is a major talking point these days. It's increasingly shaping what people watch in their social media feeds, what they listen to. So when you think about the entertainment side of AI and ethics, what risks do you see? We're living in an AI algorithm-driven culture. We're living in constantly surrounded by recommendation systems, feeds, things like that. What risks, what problems, what dangers do you see there, Ace?
Yeah, so those, those algorithms, they aim to sort of predict what we'll engage with, or, what will keep us engaged with that particular thing. So it could be based off of our watch time, how many clicks, we've had on it, or how much time we've spent on the apps. And it's not necessarily about much more than that, in a sense, where there are a few ethical risks that come with that sort of incomplete nature of algorithms. The first one, actually, there's an article on Harvard Business Review that covered this really well. But it basically helps differentiate habits between true preferences. So oftentimes the systems, these recommendation systems, simply just watch our behavior and don't necessarily help us to accomplish certain goals or values we may have. So an example is, you order pizza every Monday out of the fact that it's convenient for you. But the algorithm doesn't know that you did it out of convenience. Rather, it just assumes that you love pizza. So it'll keep pushing it back, into your system, regardless of whether you want to eat healthier. So it's like a very literal assistant that that just watches what you do and doesn't necessarily ask how you feel. And so that issue is very paramount. That's one that's talked about a lot with regards to algorithms not exactly showing what is good for you. And good is defined, in its own way, but it's what is actually what you are actually trying to get at versus what you may do, right? Sometimes you may hover over, junk food for like 1 hour with your mouse, but you actually might end up clicking on healthier food. So there is a lot that is not being covered yet in these algorithms. So we are getting recommendations based off of incomplete data sets at times, which as a result can have ethical or these other issues down the line. The other concern is when these algorithms show you what you like or have previously engaged with, it's in that way harder to stumble into that unfamiliar niche or challenging content or those territories. So not only does this sort of shield you, or not only does this prevent you from going into those areas that may, you may like a different type of music or you may like a different type of food, but you're not able to, it's harder to get to those, to get past these algorithms to then stumble into that territory, right? And that also can harm an artist or a restaurant or any producer of a good, where maybe they sell something or they providing something that may be unfamiliar or maybe niche, and because there may be a status quo or a trend or something, that it can steer you away from that and towards what is familiar. And we all know that when we are dealing with things that are familiar all the time and not challenging, it can become somewhat of an echo chamber. And echo chambers aren't necessarily the most unproblematic of things. And the third thing is there's algorithmic bias that happens, right? So anything that's trained, when algorithms are trained on human data, they also absorb the prejudice that may be in it. So, an example could be a company that hires, that hiring tools that learn to favor men in male-dominated industries, which, can reproduce these unfair patterns at a scale. So algorithmic bias is just another way that it sort of cuts out a certain portion or a certain group or those things that make it an ethically challenging sort of landscape.
Yes, these like echo chambers or information cocoons are the words that has been like pointed out for so many times or so many years when we're using AI so frequently in our daily lives. And of course, they are feeding us the information that we have been looking at. And you cannot really tell it is a good thing or bad because you like that content that they feed you, right? But the thing is that we are constantly and repeatedly seeing the information that we want. Is it really a good thing? Maybe that's also another point that we need to think about. And another thing is that these kind of things are also being mentioned in some of the ethical problems, and also, of course, this year's 2 sessions. A lot of these deputies, they are also giving out proposals in this kind of field. One example is that National People's Congress Deputy Chen Yujia focused on algorithmic discrimination, such as big data price discrimination. I think we also talked about it before, that maybe if you are like frequent user in that certain platform, and then maybe the price given to you even higher to a new user. So these kind of scenarios, and also harm caused to vulnerable groups by low quality AI products, such as agricultural AI tools that misdiagnose crop conditions, because in many fields they are also utilizing AI, right? So, and the deputy is also calling for stronger oversight in this sense.
We'll get to policies in just a little while, but I want to ask you about that, Ace. I guess my question is twofold. One, if we compare, because when we see, we talk about algorithmic feeds and things that are pushed on us, so to speak. Well, the reason that they're pushed on us is because, like you said, at some point before, we clicked on something that made the algorithm think, oh, you like that, just like the pizza on a Monday, so it recommends it to you again. So in effect, we are the ones who create the feed in a sense. And then from a marketing point of view or from an advertising point of view, is this different from traditional forms of advertisement or marketing, I wonder? Because if you watch, I know you're a bit of a football fan, Ace. If you watch the Super Bowl, on a Sunday afternoon, well, you're going to see advertisements for things like chicken wings and nachos and unhealthy foods and beers and things like that, because the advertisers know that's going to sell at that particular time to the people that are watching. Is there any comparison to be made there, or are we dealing with something completely different? Somehow it feels a little bit similar to me.
Yeah, I would say that they're quite similar in the fact that they are certainly leveraging a large audience to create those, to make people want their product. But at the same time, algorithms take a more personalized approach, where it is based off of indicated preferences you have, right? It knows that you have ordered pizza before, so it's going to recommend you 5 different pizza places. But a Super Bowl ad, they have a wide variety of advertisements, not just about food, but they have other products, maybe clothes, maybe, so many different that are there to, I think, cater. I think what they are more focused on is the fact that there is such a large audience, and so they are pushing for their product to be seen by as many people, versus an algorithm maybe simply, or maybe recommending the products to somebody they are more confident will buy it. So it's a little bit more specialized in that area. And I think that
it's you versus 400 million people,
Yeah.
or however many people watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I also think that with regards to the Super Bowl ad, it's a one and done sort of thing, where that event takes place, for a certain amount of time, whereas you're always using these apps and these things. So algorithms are constantly being updated and used for your preferences. That's a difference as well.
You mentioned about the potential dangers when it comes to bias and reinforcing bias, but it can also improve access. It can improve representation. Can you think of an example where you might see AI helping equity when it comes to creative industries, or just industries in general, or hiring processes? The areas where it falls short are quite obvious. Is there any way or anyhow that it can be doing something good as well?
Yeah, definitely. Education is a great example of how AI is being used to help. Obviously, it doesn't come without certain issues, but in a way, it has been said that AI can democratize learning in some ways, right? Students can use chatbots or AI tutors to offer some extra personalized help where teachers may be scarce. And, that is 24/7, more personalized, and as a result, students can get the help that they need, or can get more targeted help, right? So now a student who couldn't afford a tutor, but who can afford the free version of ChatGPT, can ask it questions and maybe ask it, oh, can you please help me, understand how photosynthesis works? And now that kid can have a better chance at passing that class and getting where he needs to go. So in a way, artificial intelligence can democratize learning. Now, obviously, there are a lot of ways in which it can affect it negatively, but there is something to be said about the democratizing nature of AI in education.
That is really an interesting perspective, because when we're talking about how fast, how good these AI are developing, we are always feeling anxious about it, right? One example is that the recent, very, very famous Chinese model is called C-Dance 2.0. People are
That's
using
all
them,
over the news these
right?
days. C-Dance, yeah.
They're using them to generate that realistic even cinematic vibe video clips. And then students majoring in illustration or animation are saying that, okay, our job's going to be taken by these kind of AIs. But from another perspective, you can also think that students right now, they're standing on the shoulder of the giants. You can have so much resources on the internet offered by AI. You can just generate these kind of images or video clips. Maybe when you are working on drawing frames by frames, spending months of maybe creating 2 minutes of that animation, and then only one prompt can give you that. But the thing is that, of course, we now can have the resource, and you can learn from these kind of resources and have an also better perspective on what people are doing, maybe even internationally. So I think it is also offering more, I think, channels for students that they can actually learn from these different resources.
Yeah, I use it myself all the time to simplify concepts and to understand some things, to better help me express an idea as well. And I think there is definitely an upside there with regards to learning.
Well, for creativity and for education, I mean, usually those are two separate fields, but somehow they overlap here because of the perhaps over reliance on it. I know that when AI first became a thing in the classroom, teachers were freaking out because students were handing in essays, and every essay had an M dash and
Yeah.
stated a question at the end of the
Not
first.
only, but also.
Yeah, exactly. So it became blatantly obvious, and teachers were up in arms. And then, fast forward maybe a year or two later, and all of a sudden there's a new debate about teachers' over reliance on the use of the tools in the classroom. We can make, like Yushun just said, we can make probably full-length movies in a matter of prompts and minutes, whereas actors and directors and voice artists and producers would take months and years and a large budget. I think it's easy to see the arguments on both sides where we can say the tools are there to assist. Why not make use of them? And the flip side of that coin is, but over reliance on the tools takes away something from our own ability to learn, our own ability to create. Where do you lie on this issue, which is basically the crux of what every AI conversation is about these days?
Yeah, I try to keep it centered on the idea that AI is a tool and it's not a replacement. So I like to think of it as I use it for grunt work sometimes, and I keep my contribution as far as the judgment aspect. For example, you can draft a paper or a translation or ideas or something, but you will decide the structure, the emotional core, the tone of it. And I use it a lot as a collaborator too, to ask me, challenging questions to sort of stress test whatever it is I may need to argue in a paper or something, or suggest alternatives. So there, and in those ways you are able to use it as a tool, but also maintain a position that is irreplaceable, and to maintain a strong position that allows you to remain intact with things that are our strong points as human beings, as emotional beings, as beings that feel, that can sense. These things that we allow ourselves to remain in control of, but allowing the tool to help us. Because the way that the world is going right now, every major country, superpower, wants to incorporate artificial intelligence in their operations. It's an incredibly important asset. And so the permeability, or how much AI is involved in our lives, is not necessarily something we can control in this way, of just because how much it's around us already. but what we can do with it and how we can maintain a sort of position and keep it very clear that I use this as a tool, but not as a replacement for me, right? And I've had some discussions with, I was actually talking to some lawyers who were afraid of being replaced by AI, and I think of it as not necessarily being afraid of AI replacing you.
Yeah, the thing is that a lot of these companies or schools, they strictly prohibited the use of AI, some of them. And now also in some primary school, they started to teach students how to use AI. So we're not saying that, either side is wrong. But the thing is that we need to change our mindset or the idea towards the AI and the idea of how to use AI when the time is changing.
I just worry about equity. You said, Ace, about, and it's a great point about how, students who might not be able to afford a teacher or a tutor outside of class time, now they have a tutor in the palm of their hand when they hold their phone. But at the same time, we see private schools popping up, which is fully AI focused. One that we were discussing recently is called Alpha School. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. It's popped up in the States. It's something like $65,000 a year.
Wow. Okay.
Now, obviously, not everybody can afford to go to school for $65,000 a year. So that's one example. But then if we look at it from a broader context, not every country will have equal access to AI tools that, a wealthier country might have. So again, it's the balancing act. But instead of the education side, let's focus on the countries. How can we ensure that we can all have access to the same tools, the same AI in the future, so it doesn't create an even greater divide around the world?
That's a tall order, that question. I think that we have to overcome a few logistical steps, but also one thing is that AI literacy is incredibly important. So there's one aspect of, what we call the digital divide as people who simply don't have access to it and people who do have access. And the other, a few steps further is being able to leverage those things properly. Now, I can't speak so much as to how countries can begin to get to that first step of getting access. But what I can say is that, countries who do have at least access to the internet or these tools, the beginning phases of these tools even, is to encourage more understanding and more digital AI literacy, to teach students, to teach people as to how to use it properly. How to use it properly means how to prompt it, how to be skeptical of its responses. Skeptical meaning don't take what it says for surface value. Just like anytime you read something on the internet, you might want to, or you do want to, even especially if you're researching something, if you're writing about something, you need to fact check. You need to make sure that you need to follow the way that it's thinking or the way that, it's getting to its answer. So those sorts of things are definitely something that countries can really hone in on, and to try to encourage students to understand and look at AI from a lens that it's a tool, but also to be skeptical of it in ways. Skeptical, maybe skeptical isn't the best phrase because it automatically has a negative connotation, but a more critical lens.
Sounds like you're talking about a cousin that you're not quite sure of. Do I trust what he's saying, or do I trust what she's saying, or maybe I should ask somebody else before I take it
exactly
to be true. But that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn to the business side of things. When we talk about AI ethics, the conversation often goes to tech companies. film, gaming, music, entertainment industry. And I want to come back to the point that I brought up before about how we're at a really important junction right now. And I've heard people say that if we don't put the ethics into the AI right now, we have about a 5-year window to do so, that it'll be too late and we can't retrofit it. The comparison I saw, I think it was on the Virginia Education Board website or something like that, where I saw this. They compared it to retrofitting seatbelts in a car. You don't put the car on the road and then figure out whether the car is safe and then go, oh, we have to put the seatbelts in later. And they were comparing that to AI, saying we need to instill the ethics in the AI because we can't just attach it later on. And that applies to various industries. What are your thoughts on that? And I mean, again, you used the expression tall order before. Is that an equally tall order to make sure that we get ethics into these different industries at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the tallest order to me is getting ethics into the AI systems on time. But with regards to, this sort of point of no return, or this idea that we need to be very prompt with our putting ethical regulations, putting these, putting very stringent regulations in these AI systems, I agree with it 100%, where we do need to be very fast with it, because it is, I mean, we all know, and anybody can look up how fast AI is becoming prevalent in every industry. And that's why it's important that we have, a clear understanding of what, when we should use it, how we should use it, why we should use it, when we shouldn't use it, these sorts of questions. But, and that seatbelt example is a very good one, where, yeah, we need to be prompt with putting in those ethical concerns. But I think at the same time, I would like to view it more as a constant conversation, or a constant trial process, where we have ethical regulations that are put there in place to provide a structure, but they are also there to be added on, or to be adjusted as our needs, as localized needs, as the future needs, whatever these things may be different. So I always kind of would advocate for it to be a constant conversation, something that we are always improving, because AI is something that is always improving and will continue because it keeps learning. So it needs to be a consistent, constant conversation. I don't see it more as like, oh, we have to get everything done, we have to get all of the ethics in place, and then we can put them out. I see it as we need to do that, but I would like to think of it not as there's never an ending point to it. It is we need to get started, and we need to keep adjusting as we keep going, because it will keep adjusting as we keep going.
I guess that's why it's such a hot topic at the 2 sessions
Yes.
this time.
Yeah, and at this year's National 2 Sessions, ethical governance of artificial intelligence is absolutely one of the heated discussed points. And also the principle of AI for good is also becoming a major topic of the discussion. And that's why a national committee member of the CPPCC, Qi Xiangdong, proposed the strengthening a full process detection mechanism for AI-generated content, and also improving content traceability systems. He also suggested issuing targeted regulatory guidelines for key scenarios, clearly defining liability in areas such as autonomous driving and also intelligent healthcare. We covered some of these points before. Is that these kind of points, of course, they're making our lives so much easier when we have that kind of self-autonomous systems, or no matter it's L1, L2, L3 level of autonomous driving. But the thing is that we need to define the responsibility, and also it needs to be a more clear and regulated system that we can actually rely on.
Yeah, I agree that transparency is also something that is definitely important, where we can trace back, and understand the process, understand, how from a prompt to a result, what exactly happened. And I think that also goes into education and content creation, entertainment industry, where we become more transparent about our AI usage as well. There is something to be said about when you have, perhaps made a first draft on something, or, have published content and you admit, or the, maybe Instagram can recognize that part of this is AI generated, right? That can help users understand a bit more about what they're dealing with, right? And that also, in ways, if we keep that as a standard, where anytime something is made using AI, that anytime something is not made, obviously you wouldn't say that it is made with it. So anytime something is hand-drawn, let's say, for an animated movie, in some ways you may actually appreciate it even more, because now, in this age, the artist took the deliberate decision to not make their life easier, but to instead enjoy this craft and to keep it alive and to keep it done by them. And that can also, to their audience, be a little bit more satisfying as well.
But isn't that a bit terrifying? Because it sounds like you're speaking about an endangered species as opposed to someone who draws animations for a film, like a dying breed. The lawyers are concerned. The voice actors are concerned. Maybe I should be concerned. You shouldn't, So what I always struggle with is, are we creating something that isn't necessarily good for us in the long run? And I know that's a very kind of heavy, open-ended sentence, but any thoughts on that? I guess what I think when I say that is that, there are certain areas where AI is a very useful tool for us in our own lives, and it absolutely improves our quality of life. But I don't know if it's a thing that we should be applying to every aspect of our life everywhere. Or maybe I'm just feeling nervous because we are still, of course, in the beginning stages. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that definitely, along the lines that I believe it as a tool. It's not, there's no, straight answer as to whether we have created something that is going to help or harm us in the long run. And that is why, it's important that we look into and help to take control or help control in some ways the results of this tool that we are using, through these, ethical guidelines and things like that. But it certainly does improve our quality of life now. And I grew up watching, sci-fi movies, and actually the reason I got into AI in the first place, AI ethics, was because I loved those movies that, specifically like Terminator 2 that talked about, or Terminator that talked about an AI that takes over and becomes self-aware and those sorts of things. So, I am also incredibly aware, I will say, about the fact that it can go downhill very easily if we don't take prompt action. But I'm also of the opinion that it does improve our quality of life, and it does help us, so long as we use it in the right ways. And those right ways should be communicated clearly by policymakers and ethicists in this area.
So, final question for you. What do you think? I mean, we're hearing lots of talk about it, and policies being made now in 2026 at the two sessions, which we can't disagree that that's a great thing. That, as new technology and AI tools come out, stop, check, make sure we're doing the right things with them, then move on to because we know the next ones are going to come out immediately. From your point of view, what are some of the next steps that need to be taken? And you can answer that, in terms of policy, or in terms of, from an individual point of view, what needs to happen next when we think about AI and ethics?
I think that, because of how widespread it is, everybody is at the receiving end, almost, but so many people, regardless, have access to these things. So I will answer this question from the perspective of the user, or if people like us who just use these AI devices. Policymakers, the ethicists, that's a different thing. But I think that, and it's something that I've talked about so much already. I'm sure I'm boring you with saying it so much, but it is really AI literacy. It's really understanding how to use it and how to maintain it as a tool and not as a replacement. The reason I have this as my answer, and it's so important to me, is because even at school, so many students are using artificial intelligence, and on the other hand, I feel like educators are there are some educators who have who don't understand it at all and therefore reject it, and there are some who encourage the use. And I feel like there's a lot of mismatching between students, teachers, and in general, the population. I think that can be alleviated with understanding, playing around with these tools, and to truly apply it to your life, to understand it, and then to then make a decision as to when to use it and when you don't want to use it, and to set aside time maybe of building AI-free phases into your process to help maintain your own free thinking. So I think that the next step is for people who use it, and in general for people who can have access to it, to become familiar with it and to truly try to understand what it can do for you. Try out different questions, try out different prompts, try to incorporate it in your own life. I was actually having a conversation with a teacher back in New Jersey. I had asked him what his opinion is as an educator on AI, and he said that originally it was difficult, and there was so much reluctancy to understand it or to incorporate it in anything. But after applying it to his own personal life for things that maybe helping him with a certain purchase, or helping him with what outfit to wear, these sorts of simple things that can help in your own life, when you see it applied to your own life, then he was able to understand its benefits on a more broad scale. So the next step, become familiar.
I think that the AI literacy is not only saying about how to use it. It's also about when to use it and also when not to use it. It reminded me of when short video platforms are being so viral worldwide, when people are just putting so much time on that kind of fragmented form of video. And then people are saying, okay, they're harming us. But also another perspective is that we have now fragmented time to actually get into the world and have so much more channels to get into that different fields of the world. So I think it is kind of the same idea. It's about you should have the ability to actually identify what is good for you or what can be your tool, or should you be afraid of replaced by it? And of course, we are having this conversation again and again, but the thing is that we need to have a better understanding on what it actually is and what we can do with it.
Yeah, and that's the argument, or not the argument, that was the advice that I saw pop up over and over again for people who were worried about being replaced in various industries. And I think you touched on this, Ace, is you don't need to be worried about being replaced by it unless you reject it and don't figure out how to make use of it in your own industry. That would be the critical advice, I guess, for young students now who are worried about this coming into the workplace. Is, you can still follow your dreams and be passionate about what you want to do with your own future. It's not like everybody should be, taking AI classes exclusively in all universities around the world, but yet rejecting it would also would also be a mistake, because whether we like it or not, it's going to be a part of our lives for a very, 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 very long time. So we might as well figure out how to use it to our advantage. You think that's a fair statement, Ace?
I think it's a fair statement. I think with regards to the employment being replaced, there are obviously, there's discussion about jobs that are replaced already by it, and some specific things that may not be able to be mitigated by somebody just learning about it. Some machines replace humans, and as a result, and similarly, some AI bots, replace humans as well. And I just want to make it clear that when I say that, somebody should become familiar with it and use it and understand how to leverage it for their job, it doesn't automatically make them immune to this sort of thing. And I'm not trying to, also make anybody scared for their job, but because I can't speak for every type of industry. I'm sure there are other industries where these things are actually replacing people, and it cannot, and their knowledge of AI may not necessarily be the only solution to the problem. There's some things that cannot be avoided, but for higher level jobs that I've interacted with, whether that be in academia or in the legal sense, in those areas, I am mainly referring to it. But yes, generally a fair statement.
So just to recap, here's what we need to do. We need to have policies in place as a safeguard to make sure that we are advancing ethically with AI as the advancements continue to come out month after month, year after year. It feels like hour after hour these days. Then we need to make sure that young people are aware, everyone, but especially young people, because these are the people that are going to be living with it the longest, to make sure that it's used as a tool in their lives, not to over-rely on it in every aspect of their lives. And if they figure out, if the policies make sense and we can figure out how to get ethics properly instilled into the AI, and we get the younger generation to properly figure out how to use the tools and be aware of exactly what it is, then we should be okay in the future.
Should be better off. And we should also...
That's a good...
we should also take into account in the policy and ethical decisions on what the localized needs are. Every culture prioritizes things differently. Every government, there are so many differences in how the same things are understood. So those also need to be taken into account. And by all means, that is a tall order, but it is an incredibly important one and is a worthwhile one.
Well, the good thing is we're aware what needs to be done. The tragedy would be if we didn't even know it. Ace Asim, thank you very much. You said boring us before. Oh my goodness, that was such an entertaining conversation, and thank you for enlightening us with your thoughts and ideas on the issues with ethics and AI. We had a great time chatting with you. We learned a lot, and hopefully we can have the chance to speak with you again at some point in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.